Saw a meme recently that said something like everyone hated the Gen 5 series of games when they dropped, but now they're everyone's favorite. And that's honestly so true. The more interesting part for me, though, is why that happened and how this sort of redemption arc for that generation says a lot about where Pokemon is headed in 2025. To start, though, I was not one of those people. I loved Pokemon Black and White since basically day one. I was one of those people speculating on what the Snivy silhouette was going to end up being. I was following all the Japanese leaks, which at this time, by the way, a lot of the North American fan base primarily got their information from Japanese leaks. I was seeing, along with everyone else, that these games were promising a lot of new changes to the franchise and a lot of new elements to the games that haven't really been changed in a long time at this point. So that's kind of where I'm going to start with this. So let's rewind back to 2010. We have the Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum series of games, and then Heart Gold and Soul Silver comes out. And those games are absolutely fantastic. But combined with the fact that the Nintendo DS is absolutely crushing it in the market, you ended up having a lot of fans return back to the series. And the sales numbers showed that. It was at this point that Pokemon released Pokemon Black and White. So you have a brand new region, 156 or so brand new Pokemon, and the kicker is that you couldn't use any of the old Pokemon until you finish the game, which I'll get back to in a second. Leading up to the release, I personally found that a lot of people were excited. There wasn't a whole lot of reason not to be excited. I mean, these games just looked really cool. There was like the buzz, there was the hype, there was the speculation, and then the leaks here and there. It felt like Pokemon was going in a really bold new direction. And at this time, obviously, I was following all of the leaks. I remember finding out that the protagonists of this game, or the series of games, were going to be older than normal. I remember seeing the leak of the car in the desert or something. I think that was Black and White. And people were thinking, are you going to finally get to drive a car or a vehicle in these games finally in Pokemon? That ended up happening in Sun and Moon, and it was actually Pokemon, not vehicles, but I digress. It was really exciting, and I think a lot of the fan base was kind of aligned that these games are going to be really, really cool. And then people got their hands on the games, and then something changed at that point. The excitement started to fizzle, and I think opinions turned sour really fast. My theory still is that I think people really didn't like being locked out of their favorite Pokemon for the entirety of the main game, combined with a rather weak post game. I don't quite recall too much besides like Black City. I don't remember if there probably was a battle tower in Black and White, but I mean the Black 2 and White 2 post game is just so much better in comparison. But yeah, I mean, you were kind of locked into the new experience that Game Freak had crafted for these games, the 156 new Pokemon. And another aspect of it is that I don't think a lot of people were really on board with these designs. So if you don't already know, a lot of the Pokemon Black and White Pokemon were meant to kind of represent a alternate version of the original 151. Pokemon Black and White series of games mirror Kanto in a lot of ways, but it's most evident in the Pokemon. And so you had this sort of weird situation where people were like, oh, these designs suck, we have an ice cream Pokemon. And then you'd constantly, even back then, have people say, well, here's the Kanto equivalent, and it's basically the same thing. You have a garbage Pokemon in Pokemon Black and White, and you have a sludge Pokemon in Pokemon Red and Blue. So not much to say there. I do think that Pokemon Black and White had a lot of really standout designs to this day. I think there are some amazing Pokemon designs, but I think that they were kind of overshadowed by these discussions, right? The design discussions, but also the national dex discussions, that it really didn't give the opportunity for people to appreciate them for what they were. That's where the Gen 5 was mid narrative came from, not before release, but shortly after. And that kind of dominated the conversation for a while. It was obviously a bold decision to do kind of a soft reboot with brand new Pokemon, but I think it's what made Pokemon Black and White feel alive. It's what made Unova feel like a world with its own ecology and culture. You couldn't just coast on the random Zubat or Magikarp you'd get in an early game. You had to actually explore and find out which Pokemon were worth catching again. The story, it had, I think, arguably one of the best stories in the Pokemon series. N wasn't just another rival. He had these really interesting morals and philosophies that challenged you as a character and as a player. You had the Team Plasma and the Getsis storylines, who were just straight up evil. And the fact that the champion wasn't the final boss in this game, that's still one of the best curveballs in this series. You fighting N at the end of the game. Really, really cool stuff. My personal favorite memory of these games is turning it on for the first time, seeing this cutscene, and trying to figure out what the heck this is all about, because it's really cryptic, intentionally too. It makes me want to get into the game, and it pays off. And the story with Pokemon Black and White doesn't end there. Game Freak did something they'd also never done before, which is create a direct sequel of these games. They didn't make a Pokemon Gray, they made a Pokemon Black 2 and a Pokemon White 2. Much like a real sequel, rather than the third series or a third Pokemon game, Black and White 2 expands Unova instead of starting over. You have mostly the same gym leaders, but they've gone on to do different things. Your rivals in the first game have grown up, a time skip has occurred, and they're doing different things now. And they also, at this point, decide to bring back the older Pokemon for even more variety. It felt like these games and this generation was evolving right before your very eyes and not just repeating the same formula. I remember a lot of this video is just me being super nostalgic about this time, but one of the trailers was an animated trailer for the Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 games. And it was kind of like a story trailer where the main character and their rival was fighting against Neo Team Plasma. And it just looked so epic. Even to this day, I remember how excited I was after seeing this video. So to recap, I think Gen 5 got labeled as divisive or even mid pretty early on after release, and that kind of tainted the perception of it for a little bit. But now with time on its side and you fast forward to today, I think a lot of people are finally appreciating a lot of the things that were really cool about these games. I think the bold roster choice gave us the most cohesive regional identity ever. I think that the themes and characters have aged really well. And I think more than anything else, fans in hindsight can appreciate that risks like this, which are pretty rare in the Pokemon series, are really appreciated. To connect it all to where we are today, I do think Pokemon has more of a tendency to play it safe. Scarlet and Violet, Sword and Shield, those games were all fun, and they do change up the formula in pretty significant ways. But what I loved about Black and White is that it worked within sort of the established formula, but made it feel fresh. And it's that sort of creativity that makes me excited for games like Pokemon Legends ZA, because it proves that these risks, when taken, can pay off in a big way. So yeah, I don't think Gen 5 was mid. I don't think it ever was mid. I think it was just misunderstood for a long time. And now, more than a decade later, it's finally getting the flowers it's always deserved, in my opinion. What do you think? Did you love Gen 5 from the start, or were you one of the people who came around years later? Let me know. Thanks.